It's yes, I can wait for that, or I have to do it over again. So we'll call the meeting for September 13th, 2023 of the Energy Committee to order. First thing we always do is public comment, and we do have the here, and so I'll let you make a
thank you. I'll just take a minute of your time. My name is J.P. Canner. I've lived in Williston since 1985, and I'm on the planning commission and help write the energy plan, and I'm really supportive of all the work you all are doing, and thank you. I wanted to say a couple of brief comments about your last agenda item, which is the ARPA funding spending, and looking at Belinda's memo. There's some good things in there, but I wanted to share some of my reflections about the general parameters, which is, I think we know it has to be committed by the end of 2024 and spent by 2026, I think, or something like that. So it has to be sort of shovel ready. It has to be a product. It can't just be like putting it into a fund for later use. I think you know all those things. And so that shapes it a little bit. But when you look at things like replacing a public works mower with a electric battery operated mower, they're all on a replacement cycle, and they're planning to spend a certain amount of money for a replacement. So I want to make sure if you do that, that what you specify is for the difference between the standard replacement and the electric one, rather than purchasing them one and then that money's gone from what else you could spend it on that's energy related. And I know you would want some infrastructure at the community park for the charging of those, and you might want extra batteries depending on how they work. The infrastructure to support the electric and the additional cost of the electric, but I wanted to caution against spending money on something that was going to be purchased anyway. When that takes away your abilities to push it towards energy, furthering your energy goals. The planning commission for the last 2 years when reviewing the capital budget has suggested battery rather than diesel generator backup for the town hall and the police station. They might still want a small generator to recharge the batteries if the power was off for many days, but if you're charging every 24 hours, you don't need to have enough to do every peak use during the day, as the diesel generators are, and also put solar over the canopy over the parking lot planning that's behind here. And the product, if we're not far enough along on that, the product could just be the engineering for the solar part of it. But the planning commission is interested in that project partly as a demonstration, because in form-based code and in the energy plan, we're trying to encourage solar over existing impervious surface like parking lots and roofs. And so we are having a demonstration that somebody working at Taft Corners could say, oh, we don't need to spend all the money in the engineering and stuff. We got a good example here. Can we just put that? So doing a demonstration project here of canopy solar over parking that allows for the roads still be plowed, allows for fire truck to get through. And, there's all those engineering things to figure out, but it's all doable. And so I just want to encourage whatever you can do to further that. The planning commission put that a little bit down in our goals for the ARPA funding, because we are looking at everything, and housing is really high right now on our list. And so we put some other things ahead of it. But I feel like from the energy perspective, that's a real high one. Similarly, what about a solar canopy over the ice skating and rollers rink to help recharge the mowers? And that's a place we don't need a lot of height. It would actually improve both the ice not being melted by the sun and people's enjoyment of the skate park in the summer. So I want to encourage you for actual infrastructure that will further our energy goals. And if it's something that would actually get us income that could be channeled into further efforts of the energy committee, that'd be even better. So that's why I like solar production, because you can actually set up a budget for it. You're not just sinking it into a machine that then is going to age out. You have something that's going to have a return. So anyway, those are my short musings, and I hope that I know you guys can carry that to when you're talking later.
Yeah.
Okay,
great. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Okay, take care.
All right. I'd like to suggest we just push the review of the minutes down after the Global Foundries presentation, so that you don't have to have us go through our minutes of our last meeting. It had nothing to do with why you're here. So, all right, so we have folks from Global Foundries and Encore Renewable Energy, Jeff, Jennifer, is it Tegan?
Yep.
Tegan and Jake.
That's right.
Welcome. And I'm Reed, as you met.
Dar Gibson,
Maria Jingers, Linda Scott.
Matt Wood.
And so we have received your material, and I've gone through it. And the town, from what I read through the planning commission, a lot of things were, are within what our energy plan would recommend anyway, but I'll leave it to you to do the presentation. Okay?
Of course, yeah. Let's do some quick introductions and then we'll go from there, if that's all right. So my name is Jake Clark. I'm a leader of the project development group within Encore Renewable Energy. This is Tegan.
Yep, hi, I'm Tegan. I'm new to the development team, I'm project associate on the development team at Encore, working with Jake on the Global Foundries projects.
And I'm Jennifer Robbins. I work for Global Foundries, and I have actually a worldwide facilities role of all of our sites from an engineering and planning perspective. So our site, and then the site in Malta, Singapore, and also in Dresden, we have fab facilities.
And I'm Jeff Graham of Global Foundries, and I'm a facilities manager, and I oversee all of our energy projects that we're developing in our day-to-day electrical operation.
Cool. Good. Thank you.
All right, so from here, we have some slides that we could go through to sort of introduce Encore and introduce the projects, explain sort of where we are in the process. And this would take me, I could probably get through this in 10 or 15 minutes, depending on how detailed we get. But I also have the memos that the planning commission drafted for each of the projects, sort of assessing how the projects comply with Williston's enhanced energy plans siting policies. So I could sort of leave it to you to, do you want me to go through some introductory materials and introduce the projects, or do you want me to jump right into the memos that the planning commission prepared?
I read the memos that was attached, right?
right,
So those are interesting.
Right.
Yeah, we've read that.
I mean, if you want to give us, instead of all the slides, the 5-minute version
Yes,
of how
of course.
Encore and Global Foundries got together and the basis for this project.
Slides or?
If you could, that'd be
Yeah.
great. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Sure. You're just. Okay.
Is that that might be the last one?
Yeah.
We can just jump to the beginning. Perfect. All right. Yeah, so the first slide is sort of on introducing Encore. Encore is a Vermont company based in Burlington. We've been around 15 years almost exactly. We're a certified B Corp, so we focus on, triple bottom line of people, planet, profit. And then the first project, I'll go through this sort of introduction of these two separate projects. These are two separate projects on the Global Foundries campus on the Williston town side. And they're being permitted as two separate arrays for a couple of different reasons that we can get into, but they're separate projects. So this first one, these are sort of long names, a little bit awkward, but Williston E Chip Alley Solar is 3.25 megawatts AC. That's around 8,000 panels, covering around 20 acres of these fields up there by Chip Alley Road off of Redmond Road. Instead of having some of the solar projects that you've seen in Vermont over the past decade or two are there are these large dual axis trackers that are maybe 20 feet off the ground and they rotate, they follow the sun on two angles. And then some of the other projects that you might have seen are called single axis trackers, and they follow the sun on one axis. Both of these projects, I believe, are proposed as fixed tilt racking, and the racking analysis is pretty complex, but you have to take into account topography, and then there's a value analysis to determine whether this racking that's a lot more expensive is really worth it for a project, depending on the size of the project. So for these projects, the conclusion was that fixed tilt racking, just facing the south, 4 feet off the ground at the low side and 10 and 12 feet off the ground at the high side at an angle somewhere between 25 and 30 degrees. That's the racking system that's being specified.
You're using bifacial panels, right? It's like-
Yes.
Yeah, so that negates any need for tilting, I think, right?
Yeah, I mean, that does play into it, absolutely.
What sort of capacity factor does that sort of setup look like?
That's a question I'd have to pose to our engineering staff.
Okay, it's not a big deal. I'm just curious what sort of. You've done the analysis, but what sort of difference there is between, multi-access
Oh.
versus.
Oh, sorry, yeah, I think we have seen somewhere between 10 and 20% gain with the single axis trackers,
Okay,
depending on the site, but it has to be a flat site.
Yep.
And here in northern New England, one of the really complicating factors is wind load and snow load in particular.
mhm,
So down in like the desert Southwest, they'll have two modules side by side on top of the single axis because it never snows enough to break them.
yes,
Here in New England, what you see, if you do see single axis trackers, it's one panel with the axis right underneath the middle of the module. But even then, snow and wind do become an issue for these systems. Anyways, we're required to have an agricultural style fence surrounding the project for insurance purposes and for electrical code purposes. We use this agricultural style fence that really does blend into the landscape. It's not like a chain linked fence that's kind of very visually impactful. The interconnection is to existing distribution service along Chip Valley Road going into the existing Global Foundries distribution system. There's obviously a transformer within the array as well.
Is Chip Valley Road the one that goes down to the businesses that are in there, or is it the one that's closed? That's
Closed
It's
further
the
up.
closed one.
Yeah, so if you go to the next slide, please.
can I just do a
Oh,
quick
yeah.
question about that, since it's directly into your interconnection, does that mean that? You anticipate, given Global Foundries has quite high demand, that you will be using most of it and it's not gonna be a lot of sending it to the grid, it's mostly gonna be consumed on site?
That's correct. Anything that we can fit on our site, we can pretty much take at the time it's produced.
I figured as much.
Yeah, the other one is grid tied, right? The other,
Right,
Yeah.
but from an engineering standpoint and from a contractual standpoint, all of that power is being
Right.
wheeled back into campus.
right, one directly and one
Okay.
indirectly.
Yeah, one directly and one indirectly. That's exactly right.
Okay. Makes sense.
This one, there's actually a transformer, I believe, in one of the existing Global Foundries buildings on campus, and that transformer has some capacity left, and we can pretty much connect right into that transformer. So you can see where this one is. That's Chip Valley Road to the north. That's Redmond Road going up to the Chittenden Waste Facility on the right. And then those are some existing Global Foundries, the buildings on campus on the left there.
Yeah.
The
have a
green
question.
circles.
If
Sorry, go
you don't mind. There's on the left-hand side, there's a huge, what I think is an elm. It's immense, or colossal elm. Do you know if, I would hope that's not going to be lost.
I will look into that. Any tree clearing is very highly regulated, scrutinized by the Agency of Natural Resources. So it's certainly something that will be assessed, but we'll make a note and we'll look into it. Is it over? You said it's on the left over there
On the
against where
left
the
side,
buildings-
yeah, about midway, away from the buildings.
Okay,
So down the riparian, where it says riparian setback,
yeah,
it's right up, it's probably right up in the front. Because it was on the edge of the clearing. No,
Okay.
no, it's over on the left.
Along that tree line.
Yeah. yeah, along the
Oh,
tree
there.
lines that are being cut. Yeah, so
Okay.
it's probably that tree where you have your marker right now. It's a
Yeah.
huge, beautiful elm. It'd be really, sorry to see it go.
That's.
It could be
Kevin,
closer
that's-
to where the
yeah.
riparian setback, uh, text is. Might be one of that big, one of those trees back there. But
Okay. Encore as a, just a commitment that we've made is, for every tree that we cut down, we want to plant 2 trees to replace it. This is a program that we're working to implement right now in real time. And we have to, be, realistic about what actually constitutes a tree versus a sapling. But something like this, for sure, if the decision were made that the preference would be to remove it, then A, it would be regulated by the state as an impact to some natural resource, and the second part, B, would be there would be a commitment to replace it with at least 2 trees planted.
right, but if it's a, rare tree.
Yes.
I know I'm sure you've had people go out and study it, but
Yeah.
I would be good if we can find out if that's a special elm and whether it's gonna be cut.
Okay, yep, thank you. So that's a very high level introduction to the more northern project, the Williston E Chip Alley Solar. The next slide is the Williston F Mountain View Solar. This is the field at the corner of Mountain View Road and Redmond Road. This is about 7 acres, around 3,300 panels. This one is about half the capacity, if I remember correctly, so it's 1.4 megawatts. Again, it's the same fixed tilt racking system. We have a fence, and the interconnection, as we sort of mentioned a few moments ago, is into existing 3-phase service along Redmond Road. And obviously there's a transformer inside the array as well. And the next slide then is just a concept layout of this site. Along both Redmond Road and Mountain View Road, there's a 100-foot setback from the roadway to the panels. And then there's typically somewhere around 15 to 20 feet between the panels and where the project fence line is. So that leaves somewhere on the order of 70 to 80 feet from the roadway to where the project fence is.
I have a question about that, because the person who owns that house right there is rather, well, at least they put signs up that share various opinions, and I'm wondering if they've been consulted.
I have received an email from them, and I've been in correspondence with them. The only thing that's come up is that we might be able to consult with them on some tree clearing that they do want, and maybe some tree clearing that they don't want. So it's been a
Oh, good to
fruitful,
know.
a
I
fruitful
was just
engagement
curious,
so
because
far.
as soon as I saw this location, it's right at the end of, well, I'm not in Brennan Woods, but further
Yeah.
down, but I was thinking, I know that house and they have signs up about USPS, about, every election. I'm
Okay.
like, I'm wondering how much pushback that's gonna come.
Yeah, that's always an unknown in any project, so.
That field is fairly clear already.
Yeah, it's,
That
it's,
location,
yeah,
Yeah.
from what I understand from Jeff and the,
Yes.
yeah, that it's regularly mowed or brush hogged to some extent to,
Yeah,
It's almost.
yeah.
All of this is Global Foundries property.
yes, yes. I was out there today going to the recycling center, so I
Okay.
said, slow down. That's the field, yes. Yeah, and you've had your do not trespass signs since the days of IBM, so it's, you don't usually see a lot of people tromping around on it, so.
The next slide is one that is really helpful for the discussion, and this is why solar on campus. And some of you may be aware, Global Foundries petitioned the State Public Utility Commission for permission to operate as their own utility. They have a commitment to build on-site solar in the certificate of public good that was granted to them by the Public Utility Commission. Global Foundries is they support and they're committed to Vermont's renewable energy standard that all Vermont utilities have to comply with, and that's a large part of this. Is
Mhm.
it's it enables them to sort of have more power over their energy choices and energy future, but it also enables them to participate in the state's renewable energy standard, just like any other utility in the state of Vermont. And these last three bullets are all sort of what we see as kind of almost like a win-win-win-win narrative for the project overall, and that we're locating the projects on an already developed manufacturing or campus. We're not locating these on sort of greenfield or unimpacted properties across the state. All of the energy, the intent is for the energy that the energy is going to be consumed where it is generated, rather than paying for upgrades to transmission and distribution across the state or across the region. So, and the fourth point there is that this minimizes natural resource impacts and aesthetic impacts to other parts of the state or to the region by just focusing it where the energy is going to be consumed. Do you have anything to add to that part
I
of
think
it?
that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
I'm curious, if this is about 5 megawatts
Altogether,
altogether.
but we're locating a handful of projects on the Essex side as well. And at the intent is to install several different arrays over the next handful of years and reach something on the order of 20 megawatts across the whole campus
And
That
what
was
is,
my next question.
Of solar.
of solar.
yeah, so, and then Global Foundries, I assume your load is predominantly in the day, or is it,
So our base load is 40 megawatts.
that's what I was
And it's,
wondering.
and what's
That's
what's
huge.
really nice about this is the profile of our load is, it is highest. Noon, 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, when it's hottest out, because the bulk of our energy at that point
That's cool.
is cooling and treatment of our facility.
Hmm.
And so we will peak up to 55 megawatts
That- yeah,
at points
okay.
during the summer, so.
So
So you're gonna take a lot of peak load off of the system here. then.
So we're a great repository for all of the solar that's getting built,
Yeah.
because we can use it then.
Yeah,
And then,
Yeah.
as the state hits its peak later in the evening.
Yeah.
We're starting to go back down to more of a level that we run through the entire night too.
Because I read a couple of older news articles when GlobalFoundries first got their ability to do their own utility and the thought of solar and how this was a rather minimal piece of your overall energy requirements. But it sounds like if you get all these other pieces together, it's a reasonably substantial piece.
So it can be a very big point at the time it's being generated, right? It
Yeah.
could be, it could 10 megawatts, 20 megawatts on a base of 40 to 55. But because we run a manufacturing facility 24/7.
Yeah.
As a percentage, it would be in the 5 to 10%. So there's
On
more,
average.
yeah, on average, right?
Yeah.
On average.
Of course, a year.
Yeah.
So, but certainly for that peak time when we're generating solar or electricity from solar, it would be a pretty substantial part of what our load is.
And while we're having this sort of high level sort of systems and load discussion, there's a question in the planning commission's memo. Global Foundries is working with a separate partner to develop and build battery storage systems on campus as well.
Okay.
Oh, so you-
Now, we're looking to store that on the Essex side of the site, which we haven't included it here,
Yeah.
but we do have plans on that as well, that we currently have in motion.
I'd be surprised, I'm surprised you would need to store any of it if your base load is 40.
So we don't necessarily need to store the solar, but it's an opportunity for us as we participate in the market
Yeah.
to take advantage of pricing at the
Oh,
right time.
okay, so
Yeah.
I get what you're
Right.
saying now.
So
Yeah.
that would be
Makes
the
sense.
part for us.
A large component of battery installations, the business case for battery installations in a lot of New England is peak shaving
Yeah.
during peak events, right? So.
Interesting.
Is
So
there-
do you actually participate? So you have time of day pricing then, and you're actually coordinating your power purchases right now?
So we don't at the moment,
Yeah.
but that could be
That's the
foreseeable in
goal.
the future.
Okay.
But we are a customer of ISO New England and Velco.
Okay,
And so we pay service charges based on those peak usage.
okay. That makes sense then.
I think there was a question maybe from
Kevin.
another.
Yeah, it's from Kevin. I was wondering, are you limited by the Power Service Board on how big your arrays are, or is this, it just worked out, that's the property size and you haven't been held back by Vermont's laws or anything, have you?
That's a very good question. So part of the renewable energy standard in Vermont, there's sort of 3 tiers of procurement for energy supply that utilities have to comply with. And one of them is tier 2 under the renewable energy standard, and tier 2 facilities are limited to 5 megawatts and smaller. That's one of the reasons that we're building out separate arrays, but there's also a very just, pragmatic logistics component to it, where we're looking at what are the best sites, what are the most feasible sites, and all of them that we found on campus just for natural reasons. Some of them being what the size of the field, what's the size of the parking lot, what's the size of the capacity for the interconnection, what's the proximity to the interconnection. All of the sites that we have found and identified as feasible are under 5 megawatts, regardless of the Public Utility Commission or the state laws, 5 megawatt cap for individual arrays.
Good, thank you. I'm glad it worked, got lucky there.
Right, thanks. This next slide, which I think may be the last one that I really seek to touch upon, is just that to convey to you that we really have been working for months, coming up on a year, on a very complex process of identifying what are the best sites. And the criteria that we're looking at in early stages are, the things that make up a project possible. What are the aesthetic impacts, the visual impacts? What are the natural resources impacts that we know we're going to have to work through? What are there historical or archaeological constraints on site? And then the really physical constraints like interconnection, site access, subsurface conditions, and terrain and topography. So these are all elements that went into our sort of decision-making matrix to identify what are the most feasible sites. And that's the reason that we're advancing these sites that we have identified at this point.
With the rains we've had this summer, did you notice anything different in the land? In terms of, did it change any of your decisions about, how you would install the array, or was it not that significant compared to,
No,
I know they're pretty well open fields is what you're dealing with.
yeah, I mean,
You're not in the floodplain.
exactly, the
Yeah.
floodplain constraint
Yeah.
is a very serious one.
Yeah.
And, Encore has permitted solar projects in floodplains, and what that really boils down to is, would the solar project impede the floodplain's ability to service a flood as it needs to during a flooding event? So if the answer is no, then we wouldn't be able to permit a big solar project in a floodplain. But here on Global Foundries, the entire campus, all of the sites that we're looking at are well above the floodplain.
Yeah, okay.
We haven't yet gotten to the point where we've actually done a test that the racking company will do, where they insert the racket into the recommended depth, and then they wiggle it around with this big machine to see how well the steel racking stays in the soil.
Mhm.
And I think I've heard from our construction team that with how wet this summer has been, there are sites where the racking company is saying, let's recommend that we put the steel in a little bit deeper because the ground is so wet right now.
I'm curious, because living in that swath of land where I am, it's pure clay, but part of Brennan Woods turns to pure sand.
Yep.
I'm wondering, is that site sand or clay or
Yeah,
both?
we don't know
Is
yet.
it like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's
it's,
such a mix?
part of another committee I'm on, we've been looking at some studies UPM did, and this was all part of the post-glacial Lake Champlain, which
Right.
Lake Vermont, that came all the way up into this area. So there's everything from gravel to sand to clay and everything in a mixed and a few hills around. You know, I know those particular open areas you're looking at are pretty flat, but I guess you'll find out when you dig down.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The next slide is really about, we don't have to go back to it. I can just talk through. I don't need the slide to be up. It's about process. In order to get the certificate of public good from the Public Utility Commission, we submit our CPG petition, and that has to satisfy all of the statutory criteria. And that covers all the natural resources elements, archaeological elements, geotechnical elements, aesthetics, interconnection, and all of this requires a lot of field work. So we've been conducting all of our field work pretty much as soon as we could when the snow melted and the summer season opens up. And those field studies are now being converted into the actual reports that will be submitted for the certificate of public good. And this is just a small piece of like a report or a CPG petition I put together last year. And this is 180 pages.
Wow.
The whole report will be submitted to the town when it's ready. So you'll get all of the reports, all of the memos and analyses that go to the state. You'll get it electronically if that's your preference, and I hope that it is. Because
I only printed 4 pages.
yeah. And we hope to start getting to the point where we're ready to file these certificate of public good petitions within maybe a 2-month time frame. And then once the petitions are filed, the process of working to prove to the state that we've satisfied all the criteria can take anywhere from 8 to 16 months. It's very hard to predict. And we can't do any construction on site, any work associated with the solar project at all, until we have the certificate of public good in hand. So it could be, this time next year, we could have a certificate of public good in hand. And then because procurement timelines are really complex right now for the equipment that we need, it could be another year before we had a commercial operation date.
Wow.
So the idea is we'll just keep the town informed as we go through the permitting process with the state, which is where the majority of the the permitting authority resides in Vermont. And let you know as we get closer to construction, because that's when people need to know what's going on in town. With that, I think I'll just take a pause. And my recommendation would be the next thing we talk about would be the memos from the planning commission, but
Yeah, just,
give you a break for questions.
and, yeah, so, after questions, I just wanna kind of provide the energy committee with some background related to that memo. To be clear, I drafted that memo to tee it up for the energy committee and then tee it up for the planning commission, because the planning commission is ultimately gonna sign that memo and send it into PUC. So, yeah.
We make recommendations.
Right.
To flow uphill to the planning commission. We're just still in this building, but we're just
Yeah.
volunteer group.
Great. Well, thank you for the memos. These are very helpful.
Good summary.
Are there any questions, or should I jump into the?
I don't have any.
I can share that out to.
Does ISON do your construction?
We do a good bit of construction with ISO.
Not everything.
Not everything. I mean, we're operating in Vermont, New Hampshire, New York, Maine, Connecticut, and then we have early stage development in another 10 or 15 states.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, so just to give you some background, so why are we writing, why is the town writing this memo? The town wrote this enhanced energy plan, and one of the reasons for that was to get the status of substantial deference with projects that are coming before the PUC. And essentially that means that the town can comment on PUC projects, and the comment
basically come in and review PUC projects. That review is really limited to the town siting policies that are included in the energy plan. So it's very focused on that. It's not, doesn't have anything to do with the town regulations or bylaws or anything, because they don't apply to, renewable energy projects. So that being said, the memo that you see before you is, just basically looking at the project, with respect to the town's energy plan goals and the siting policies. So sort of goes through each of these siting policies, as you see them in the energy plan, and it kind of, looks at the, looks and makes a comment about the project and how the project, I guess is supported, or, basically, I don't want to use the word comply, but, is supported by those siting policies. And, so the PUC, Simon and I, wrote this, kind of worked on drafting these memos, and, there was a learning curve involved. We asked for some guidance from the Regional Planning Commission. We started out with like a 6-page staff report, 6 or 7 or 8 pages, I can't remember. And the Regional Planning Commission said that UC is not gonna read 6 pages. They might read a 2-page memo, or, anything beyond that. They're not gonna read it, so. And then basically just, the RPC kind of school lesson, like the word and, not using phrases like, you shall do this and you shall do that, but just, we'd like more information about this, we're interested in that. So anyway, just to give you some background about the whole process.
Thank you.
Yeah, so. Anyway, for this Mountain View project, oh no, this is not. That's,
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
That's the F
It's the
one.
3.5.
that's the Chip Valley one. I thought I
Oh, I
re-uploaded
think-
memos, but,
Yeah, the
title
3.5
was-
one is E, right?
Is the chip out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
So
should
that's-
say that. I don't know why, it doesn't, but anyway, it is the Chip Valley project. Disregard that. So with regard to scenic view sheds, the project's not in a scenic view shed. That policy doesn't apply. And the policy regarding habitat, the project is within a significant wildlife habitat area. And the town would like to see that a habitat disturbance assessment, be prepared and submitted by the applicant as part of the application for certificate of public good. I imagine you have to have, these assessments done anyway.
Correct.
Yeah, and
Right, on that, would there be mitigation that could be done? Like the fencing, or, allows certain passage through or something? If it's like a wildlife corridor, which would be my concern.
Yeah, I would be really surprised if we found large wildlife. Meaning not a large corridor, a corridor for large wildlife in these areas. But what I have seen the Agency of Natural Resources sort of require in the past is that the agricultural style fencing that we typically use is intended to be used for grazing livestock on a large scale. And in order to save, the design of this fencing is such that it has small openings at the bottom, and then as you go towards the top of the fence, it's sort of graduated, and the openings get larger and larger. And I think that this makes the installation cost for the fencing lower when you're talking about installing hundreds or thousands of miles of fencing out west. But the point is, what the Agency of Natural Resources asks or demands that we do is install it upside down so that the larger openings are at the bottom for wildlife that they may be moving along the ground, and then they can pass through the fence, smaller wildlife.
Smaller wildlife.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and on projects, I've been on built projects. I mean, I've seen foxes inside the arrays.
Okay,
So-
great. That's excellent. Good.
You go to Shelburne Vineyards and you see, sheep.
Yeah, I can address that in a few minutes. Just on the habitat item, one of the statutory criteria that we need to address is rare and irreplaceable natural areas, necessary wildlife habitat, and rare, threatened, and endangered species. And those studies that we are required to submit to the state, I'm confident they will assess a habitat disturbance assessment. They'll have the same effect for the town's purposes. So I'll just, and then the town will receive the full petition. I know I said this already, but the town will receive the full petition when it's shipped off to the state.
Yeah, so moving on, policy 4 has to do with watershed protection buffers. And the Vermont A&R wetlands inventory doesn't show any map wetlands in the project area. However, wetlands are suspected, so the town would like to see, and I'm sure this is required, wetlands delineation submitted and shown on the site plan. And that 50-foot buffer be maintained around the wetland, which is also a state requirement, I believe, right?
That's right.
So the wetland in this case is that on the Chip Alley one, there's a
Right.
area that runs.
So
between.
riparian boundary.
Right.
Is that a classified wetland, you know?
I don't believe it's been finalized yet. If there's a stream, even an intermittent stream that runs through the center of that field, my intuition, based on experience, tells me that it'll be treated as a class 2 wetland with a 50-foot buffer.
Okay.
And I can stay focused on this Chip Alley project for now. For any project in Vermont, the Agency of Natural Resources is a statutory party to the CPG proceeding. It's sort of a quasi judicial process at the Public Utility Commission. And the Agency of Natural Resources manages the assessment of all of those natural resources criteria. And if the Agency of Natural Resources decides that a project will have an impact to a wetland or to a wetland buffer, the project applicant needs to procure a wetland permit to permit for any impacts to wetlands or to buffers. So in some cases, like we need an access road to go through a wetland or to a buffer to access the site. Or we might need to conduct some tree clearings to prevent trees that are in a wetland or in a buffer from being a fall hazard onto project equipment. That's an impact that needs to be permitted. So all of that will be in our final petition package.
Yeah.
In this project, the Chip Alley project, that riparian area with a 50-foot buffer that runs through the center of the field will be very, very closely scrutinized by the Agency of Natural Resources, by the stream program, by the wetland program.
Thank you.
And then with respect to policy 5, location, project location meets the intent of the town siting policy to locate energy generation proximate to existing distribution and transmission infrastructure, adequate capacity, and near areas with high electric load. And so this particular project is supplying global boundaries with a direct connection to a nearby building. The global boundaries grid is independent, not connected to GMP's grid, and will impact the capacity of existing distribution transmission infrastructure. And then policy 6 and 7 are not applicable to this project. And then utility lines, the town, the siting policy says that it's preferred the utility lines be located underground, and that, you know, any transmission lines, substations, and similar sport facilities be placed underground. Except where bedrock is present or other environmental constraints would make it prohibitively expensive. And then just that any utilities that are above ground be carefully screened. And so, yeah, so basically. The town which just wants to see how the project will be connected to the nearby buildings in the filing. And is recommending utility lines be placed underground where feasible.
Would that be necessary for this particular site if it's just running to their own sort of transformer on their own property? Would that burying it be something that
Yeah, that's a good
would
question,
need to be enforced?
right?
Not that there's
I mean,
enforcement.
we're not enforced, right?
Right. No,
So,
wrong
yeah.
word, but
Yeah.
even necessary.
Hmm.
I don't know that it would be an easy thing to run the underground in this case. It's such a short distance.
Yeah,
We're on private property connecting to a transformer on the same campus on the same private property.
yeah.
We don't have public viewpoints that can see where this interconnection is happening.
Right, so in this case, it's probably not feasible or applicable. So,
Yeah.
And, you know, if you want, I can, you know, basically, revise that section H just to reflect that. Just to say, you know, in this case, it's like such a short distance to the building, it's all on private property. And not really feasible to locate underground.
It's sort of an unnecessary burden.
Yeah.
Okay. And then for, as far as energy storage, policy says renewable energy generation projects, that can accommodate energy storage are strongly encouraged. And the town is interested in whether the proposed project plans to incorporate energy storage, and I think we got. Our answer to that one too.
Mhm.
But on the Essex side.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
The company travels the town, so.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on
Thank you
this?
for writing that, yeah, when I read it with. Well, you know, when we created the energy plan, we took a lot of time to look at view shed, impacts on wetlands, you know, impacts on other possible development in the area, and it's seen, you know, as a personal opinion, that your project fits what our energy plan would ask somebody to do.
I think so. I was just curious about that aspect of it. It's because I know in the energy plan, it does say that we're supposed to prioritize siting of these projects in town. But is it assumed that siting it in town means the energy would be supplied to the town? Because this is sited in the town, but the energy is not even going to Williston. So is that
I don't think we ever,
Consideration.
we didn't even, I don't think we ever considered that.
I think it's, yeah, I don't,
I was just curious if that's
Yeah.
sort of implied in the plan that siting it in town means the energy is coming to the town
No.
itself in some way. I mean, I know we're all interconnected to the grid anyway, so.
Well, yeah, but at the same time, I think if we were to do, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we're doing like a greenhouse gas study, a carbon footprint study on Williston, a chunk of Global Foundries energy use is technically from in our footprint, right? So if they're taking, since it's in Williston, that would
Yes.
technically go against our carbon footprint. So anything, it's not coming to the town, but
Right,
it's
it's
also
offsetting the-
offsetting some of the town's carbon footprint.
I mean, I think the intent of that policy or that goal to increase renewable energy generation in Williston really is the intent is to contribute Williston's fair share of the state's renewable energy generation goal towards the state's goals of renewable energy generation. I don't think it necessarily implies that it needs to be consumed in Williston, but if Williston sort of ups its, you know, percentage of sites.
Generation.
Yeah. Yes, that's my. Should I move to the next one and?
Sure.
Okay. So. Oops. Okay. Okay, so very same sort of, layout here. So this, the Mountain View Road, project is within a view shed. So it's within a mapped primary view shed. And the town is requesting that a visual assessment be conducted and included in the application filing. Including information on how the project will screen the solar array, and blend it in.
Can I just ask about that? I know, I mean, I haven't really been up there recently, but Ledgewood Drive, you know, that really high hill just
Yeah.
to the east of it.
Mhm.
Are they gonna be able to see all these panels from up
I
there?
don't think so, because,
Yeah.
They'd
There's
be
a
able to
hill,
see the
they
other
don't
ones
look-
then too.
because the
It's a big
Velco
project.
Yeah.
project that sits up there is in between them, isn't it?
But I would,
don't know.
I would assume that any visual assessment will like kind of look at the entire view shed area and. Then you'd be able to tell like where, you know, you'd be able to look at where, from where the project is visible, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah, those view shed analyses are a part of every project, and I have this is a condensed version of an aesthetic and early development analysis from a previous project, and this is 50 or 60 pages, and it's missing some of the attachments I just realized. But some of the attachments are a view shed analysis, leaf on and leaf off, it incorporates terrain.
Mhm.
Now, this recommendation, I think, is great. We'll be happy to comply with this recommendation. We will be conducting the visual aesthetic assessment. It sort of goes hand in hand with the orderly development analysis, which really addresses the project's compliance with the town plan, with the energy plan, with the comprehensive plan. And we are planning on installing screening along Mountain View Road, vegetative screening along Mountain View Road.
Mhm.
But I just have to in the interest of full transparency, vegetative screening is intended to break up and disrupt views of the array. It's never meant to say it's gonna be completely invisible. And if there are elements of topography surrounding the project such that there are public viewpoints from an elevated spot, a tree isn't really gonna help much. You look right over a tree from up on a hill, so there's only so much that can be done, but we're very happy to work with you. Encore has built its reputation on working with towns and neighbors to mitigate concerns around whatever it may be, but aesthetics and visual impact in particular. Our screening plans are typically designed by a landscape architect here in town. And they're typically a mix of deciduous and coniferous trees and shrubs to sort of provide certain color and variation in context or texture, I meant to say. The last part of that is just that transplanting large trees is never really going to be successful. So we put them in as large as we can, but they're not very big. One of the other things that we can provide, if it's helpful, is a photographic simulation that shows a photo of the field as it is, then a photo of the field with the solar in place and the fence, and then a photo of the field with simulated screening plantings in place. And that final simulation is with the plantings at 5 years after installation. So it's meant to say, this is what it'll look like in about 5 years. So we'll be happy to work with you on that one.
That's a pretty flat field, isn't it?
Slopes
It
uphill,
slopes a little bit,
Yeah,
so it's probably not gonna be that easy to see from Mountain View, I mean, from Mountain View Road, yes, but in
Not
general.
all of it, no, yeah, it's part of it slopes away from the road, part of it comes up a little bit from the road, but not, that's one corner of it, really.
That array,
further to the west, is that on Global Foundry? That's,
It is, that's
and what size
Green
is
Mountain,
that?
a little under 5, Green Mountain Power built that.
That's the DOE one, isn't it?
So
DOE
there's a small, there's
Like Payos.
two over, there's two over there. There's a Green Mountain Power one that they built probably 2015. That's a little under 5. And then there is a smaller one that was DOE that is, we own that property now, and I don't know if there's a few panels on that, but that program ended, so.
Mhm. So
Those-
that's a 5 almost, that's just down the road.
Right,
Green Mountain
Same
Power,
size,
yeah.
and that's not,
You don't,
find that.
you go by it and you notice it, but you don't, it doesn't stick out.
You have to look for it though, 'cause you're
Yeah,
not
right,
gonna notice it
right.
unless
Yeah,
you're.
yeah.
in leaf on, I'm not sure you can see it, but I
Yeah.
could be wrong. In leaf off, yes.
I don't think you can really see it unless you're really looking for it when the leaves are on.
You
Yeah,
can't tell it's that big.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
An anecdote on that DOE project. The funding sort of, federal funding sort of came to an end, the project was decommissioned, they took it apart, they sent it to Arizona, I think. And then UVM got wind of it. And now we're installing it at the McNeil Generating Station in Burlington
Really?
for UVM and McNeil and Burlington Electric. It'll be like a test project for college students.
That's cool.
Yeah,
That's cool.
Cool, yeah.
it's like 49 kilowatts or something.
That's not in a floodplain? No, it's probably just like.
It's adjacent to a floodplain.
Yeah, I was like, it's pretty darn close.
It did get flooded during this recent flood, but it'll be okay.
So I was gonna say, when you fly into the airport, there are a couple arrays you can see and they're really close to the Winooski, and I've always wondered.
Just from a general perspective of seeing it, we're all familiar with the Route 7 ones down in Virginia, Ferrisburg, those big ones. How does this fit in terms of the size of those fields?
I believe those are side by side 2.2 megawatt arrays, which are around 12 acres each, but at that time. The state didn't prohibit developers from building 2 projects side by side, so they capped the program that was. Advancing those projects at 2.2 megawatts, and the developer said, all right, we'll make it 4.4, and we'll divide it in half with a fence.
Right.
Loophole.
That's not allowed anymore,
Yeah,
but
those have no barriers to sight.
now, one of the things that also happened was there were sort of some bad actors in the early years of solar in Vermont. And the developers came in and they put up screening, and then they never checked on it, they never watered it, they never fertilized it.
Yes.
And now the PUC has a rule that says you have to file a certification that you've checked on the health of your vegetative screening every 2 or 3 years. And if it doesn't look like it was approved to be looked like, then you have to replant. So some of those projects in New Haven and Virgins, the plantings all died, and there was nothing the state could do about it.
well, you know, they don't bother me when I see them. My only concern would be if there was glare on to cars getting blinded on Mountain View Road, because it does. But I don't think you're gonna be even in that direction, right? Because that's
No, they're
that's
east-west,
an
right?
east-west road, and you're gonna be going north-south, so it shouldn't be visually, and why would, I mean, we wanna see that.
Yeah,
We need solar in this world, right? We have to see it. I don't,
It's better than a coal plant.
hope you don't have to spend too much on the shielding for certain, people's aesthetics, because it's,
you might be surprised. But
If there's an email in the group of documents that
Well,
says,
there
please
is.
put a fence up, I don't wanna see it.
Well, some degree of screening, I think is.
Yes, absolutely.
appropriate, but it's- Yeah.
All right.
Honestly, I think it's better for security reasons anyway, not to have it hanging out, just obvious.
Yeah.
Personally, more than for aesthetics, but that's just me.
yeah, I would agree with that.
And similar to the previous project, same recommendations for habitat, having an assessment done. And basically, yeah, there's an unnamed stream, same basic thing, delineate the stream and any wetlands around it, and maintain a buffer. And then, so this project has direct access to three-phase power, is near Green Mountain Power and Belco transmission lines, without distribution constraints. And it will serve Global Foundries, which is among the single largest users of electricity in the state, so high load, which is good. You know, and then again, just this recommendation to place utilities underground where feasible. And again, just information about energy storage requested. And that's pretty much it. Thoughts, additions, subtractions, other than what you already mentioned. Project.
There's on this project, the transformer is along Redmond Road, the Redmond Road side of the project. And then typically there's a short overhead run from the transformer to the existing service along Redmond Road, the existing distribution service. And typically what happens is, as soon as we electrify the project, our contractual arrangements with GMP kick in, and GMP effectively takes ownership of that short run from the transformer to the road. So that if anything were to ever happen, they could come in and maintain it and repair it, do what they need to do. GMP's preference would be that line is overhead.
Yeah,
Short
okay,
line.
okay, well, we
Yeah.
tried,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not exactly a place where it's gonna cut.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, it's on
Redmond
Redmond Road, which is better than
Road.
Mountain View. and
Yeah.
Yeah.
The road to the transfer station, so, yeah.
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 Yeah, there aren't high standards for that particular.
The right place for it, absolutely.
Yeah, so I think that's all we had about the projects that the town did receive a comment letter, which I guess Maria already mentioned, just requesting street trees and other natural visual barriers to the degree that eliminates any view of solar panels or electrical infrastructure. And so we've seen that that's not really feasible to make it invisible, but it sounds like they're gonna try to soften the view.
Oh, the ugliest parts are gonna be along Redmond Road.
Yeah. I intend to get in touch with this member of the public, if that's okay with you all, just let them know what the plans are.
Mhm.
So it's all publicly available information at this point because it's posted on your website, but I just thought I'd mention that.
I mean, it seems half the time anyway, if you acknowledge someone's complaint and
That's the whole,
they
Yeah.
don't. They feel better anyway.
that's absolutely how it works.
And my husband's an engineer, civil engineer, and so half his job is public outreach.
It's a big part of any project.
Letting people complain goes a long way.
Well, do we have somebody else on?
What's that?
Is from your company?
There's video on.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, Warren's with MMR and helped us for this project.
Yeah,
And-
you-
And then
Gina's
Gina's
on.
with Global Foundries as
Okay,
well with
okay,
us, yeah.
okay.
Yep, they've
I've
been on the
been
whole
paying
time.
attention to that column of things and
Yeah,
there's more
they've
people,
been
so
on the
they
whole
can
thing.
be this here. It's all right. All right. Anything else? Any other comments?
I think, yeah, I think it looks good.
well, I really wanted to thank you for your time. I appreciate all the questions. I appreciate the attention to detail. I particularly appreciate these memos that sort of keep the discussion focused to where it kind of needs to be. This is very helpful. So thank you all for your time. Thank you for these memos.
Yeah.
I
Thank
would echo
you.
that as well. I really appreciate you getting to share the project that we're working on, and we've been working on this a while, and we're excited about the project, and we're glad to be able to come and talk with you tonight. So thank you.
Yeah, that's great. It's a long road, but it sounds like it. But, I think,
Yeah, good luck. I hope it goes forward smoothly.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
Yeah, well, thank you
Yeah,
very
of course.
much. It's good.
Just if I may, in terms of next steps, is your plan to make a recommendation to the planning commission at this time, or? wait and let us introduce the project to them first? What makes sense to you all?
Well, I guess, what I would recommend is just to, pass that memo along to the
Okay.
planning commission with with revisions as noted.
And then we'll plan to have a discussion with them.
Mhm.
Okay, that's perfect.
And so we have you on the agenda for next Tuesday, is that still?
I think that's,
Mhm.
yes, that's right.
Yep,
Okay, we'll see you then.
sounds good, all right.
Awesome.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all very
Thanks
much.
very much.
Great.
Thanks. Kate.
Yeah, this is.
I feel like we're very,
Hopefully there will be.
I know, it's like that's not.
Thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Have a good one.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's interesting because we're actively working in my job.
Here's the names of the four of them.
All right,
for-
thank you.
For reference.
Yeah,
for the minutes.
that's.
We're actively working to figure out how, like they said, they're a direct customer of ISM New England, so they're cut off from GMP. And they want to decide when they are taking energy and when they aren't. And we're working on that, an SPP right now, because it's a challenge to know, because it's what we call non-conforming load, I believe, because it's kind of. It's almost like demand response in a way, especially if they store and it will put energy storage. And it makes it very hard to know, to plan, when you get these big loads that end up being kind of quasi demand response. So
Right,
it's really cool.
They're buffering themselves.
Yeah, and I mean, they're responding, hopefully they're responding to price signals, which is what they plan to do.
Well, as their own utility now, they have
Yep.
that sort of right and leverage and they can play in those markets. So I think the whole project makes absolute sense. We need to have the regulations and the guidelines. It's a little embarrassing, the amount of administrative work that these projects have to go through when the entire country is screaming about climate change at the same time,
Including the state of Vermont, but it takes a year for the PUC to look through the
Right,
application.
so it's like, we need to do the due diligence, but when a project is doing things, looks good and meets the criteria, we should make those projects done.
It would be good to have like the equivalent of like a form-based code, if you can tick these
Right,
boxes, go
right.
for it.
Exactly, like.
Well, I think the whole energy plan helps that with the way
Yeah.
that it was written, the way that it was approved. You get the substantial deference on these projects and I think it helps a lot, the way, and
Yeah,
your
simplifies.
congratulations for being able to pull those things out and
Yeah.
say those,
It was like.
Yeah, no, it made a
we
real,
didn't really
like
know how to
Jacob,
approach
like
it.
Jacob said, it really keeps everybody focused on the guidelines that apply.
Right.
It might not be a bad idea for the town or the energy, the planning commission an energy committee to tell the public service board, hey, this is all good, we've examined it and,
Yeah.
please fast track. Because a year is ridiculous. It really is silly.
Yeah, it's a little embarrassing. It's gonna take that much, 180 pages in 2 years.
Right, and where, it's right where you want it. And it's, I mean-
It's the physical.
It's
layout of
on-site,
it, Yeah.
It's directly to their
Yeah, it's the
facility.
best case scenario.
It is.
And
It's-
it's reducing load during peak
Yeah.
hours too.
Yeah,
It's not like.
and they have
when
the
we-
batteries, yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's
they're
not like
putting-
citing wind where it's like, okay, a lot of this is gonna happen in the middle of the night. No, this is like peak.
Right, and the way it works for their demand. Yeah,
Matches their load curve, yeah, it's.
They use-
So if we're gonna send forward anything, if we're gonna forward anything to the planning commission, should we say that? Let
I think
for
so.
the next meeting, say, hey, can let's send a letter to the public service board. That, their experts need to look at it, make sure, we're not missing things, but it looks like it should be fast tracked. It's a
It's a model project.
I don't
model
think they
project.
Yeah,
fast track.
I'm not sure that fast tracking is a
Right,
thing.
well, that's a problem. Like you were saying, the form-based code thing or the
Yeah.
building requirements, like Matt was saying, if it ticks all these boxes, then, you know.
I mean, so there,
Move to the next step.
there is there is a statement, right up front. This project, you know, the town strongly supports this project because it helps the town further its energy goals and more, increasing renewables in town.
Right. It does what the energy
Yeah.
plan is requesting.
Okay, we have about another hour and a half of work.
Well, and I'm gonna throw a potential wrench in it too, with the ARPA funds thing.
So,
Cause I noticed there are only 4 things made. That was-
we didn't do the minutes yet.
Uh,
All in
You can-
favor?
you can
say
always-
I read them, they're good.
Who made,
I abstain.
making the motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay.
Anybody else second it?
I wasn't in attendance, that's the August 23rd
23rd
meeting.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
not there.
I wasn't either. Well, I'll make a motion to second it. I can do that.
Okay,
But I think we said it last time, even if you weren't here, you can vote on it.
yes, you
Oh,
can.
okay.
Yeah, so all those in favor of approving the minutes of August 23rd to 2023, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Kevin? Kevin,
I said, yep.
The ayes have it. Thank you.
All right.
I do want to change the order. We're 3 days away from our energy fair.
I just remembered to post on our neighborhood Facebook too, while they were talking.
And I put it on Front Porch Forum and I put it in the Observer this past week. So,
And there was a mention I just saw in the 7 days has a Drive Electric Vermont.
yeah,
Oh,
and we are
It's been
ready.
first.
Oh, good.
It's
good.
the first
Really,
on
really.
there coming up. in the
Yeah,
next 5 or
Yes,
7.
Kevin Thorley sent me the link and I signed it up. So-
Awesome. Yeah, cool.
So, first question. Who will
Ready.
be there?
I will,
I will.
that's getting me out of a 4-year-old's birthday.
You'll be there.
My husband.
That-
What are we,
Matt and I will be
for-
there under the Williston 2050 tent with our new.
So-
tent.
what time is set up?
Setup is,
Noon, right?
we asked the vendors to get there between noon and 1, so we should be there a few minutes ahead of noon.
Cause it starts officially at 1, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
1 to 4?
Yeah, before,
Kevin, Kevin, are you gonna,
yeah,
are you gonna?
I was supposed to go to Cape Cod, but the hurricane's gonna get there ahead of me, so I'll be there Saturday, because
And I'm gonna be part of EV, I'll have my EV there,
Yeah.
but, thank you for picking up the Mo Electric, I can't get hold of Steven Ellison.
It's okay,
so,
yeah,
Yeah.
no, that worked out really well.
But my question there was, is I know we can't do demos, like people can't just be
No,
mowing.
no, it's static.
Is there a way, I tried to talk to, I have a neighbor who also has electric. Appliances, but they're not able to come.
Tim Allard is, who has an electric landscaping business, is bringing his trailer with us too.
Oh, okay,
The
perfect, cause I was like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
can bring some of ours, but I'm not able, since I'm standing at an EV and my
Yeah.
husband will be with Jane, I'm not able to like talk about them at all.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's good that we
So,
have.
okay,
So.
so we'll start.
Melinda, I'll be,
Saturday.
I'll have an Aria, a Nissan Aria.
Cool, great.
So we'll get there 11:45 or so. So that we get the cones out.
So do you wanna need help picking up food or other things?
We don't really.
We don't have any food.
Plan for food and.
No.
Okay, cause that was on the list,
I-
like to pick up refreshments.
Yeah, I mean, I can pick up some cookies and maybe some
Yeah.
drinks at Hannaford, that's what I did last year.
Yeah.
I can do
So-
that.
So we have a map. We know where we're gonna put the vehicles.
Yeah.
Weather
Let's,
is decent,
Yeah, it does.
so,
not great.
looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
There's more,
Likely and 9.
there's
some
more on the
likely-
Drive Electric site too.
Oh, there are.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have at least a dozen to 15 vehicles, so that'll be good.
Well, and last time more showed up than we expected.
Right, yes, yes.
That'd be cool if that
Yes.
happened again.
We have. Would you click to the partners, please?
Sure.
So. We have GMP. Green Mountain Solar, Vermont Gas, Building Energy. Sun Common. Elon's. That's the name of it, isn't it,
That's
Kevin?
Elon.
Yeah.
Yeah, Elon's, I put
So
that
that's
in.
how they pronounced it, yeah.
Yeah, Safe Routes to School was supposed to be there. Earl's Bikes, I want him to be there and he won't get back to me. I keep pounding it. And,
Yeah, right.
I think it's gonna come right down to the last minute. Does he have a staff member he can send over with a couple of e-bikes? It won't be demos, but it'll be static, you know,
Yeah, I mean,
but that's still good.
fun to talk
Yeah.
Yeah.
He lost a lot of staff that went back to college there,
Oh, yes.
so his young energetic crew is gone, so,
So I've had trouble getting Lily to respond to me from Green Mountain Solar. She said
Really?
she was gonna come a long time ago, but now
Yeah.
whenever I email her, I get like a blank auto reply. Like it's an auto reply, but it's
Oh.
totally blank, so I don't.
Okay.
I've
So I'm gonna call, yeah.
call people,
But I
please.
feel like
Yeah, should we be doing follow-up or? do we
I
want-
think it wouldn't hurt to make a phone call to these people and remind them, you know,
Yeah.
to your contacts.
Yeah.
And tomorrow,
Yeah.
you know, and, I will try Earl's tomorrow again. I'll actually run drive over there and talk to Joe, the manager, and, cause he was psyched about it, but
Yeah.
he's just stuck right now, you know.
Yeah.
And he's so busy, he hasn't called me back, so. So at a minimum, you know, last year we had 2 vendors. This year we'll have at least 6 or 7, you know, that'd be cool.
Yeah, same amount of cars probably.
I posted on our Facebook website that it's, you know, EVs, but also all about electrification
Yeah.
from, you know, energy efficiency
If
to
you-
your,
Look at Front Porch Forum
I did,
from yesterday, you see the one I posted?
Yep.
That's the same language that was in the Observer, so just steal that language if you wanna use that.
Okay,
I
yeah.
wrote it, so, you know, so,
yep.
yeah.
I have a question for you. Only because you know where the sheep barn is and you're familiar.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to grab a bunch of traffic cones and bring them on Saturday?
From the sheep farm?
Yeah, there's like a bunch of traffic cones that are like for the forestry project and,
Yeah, but are
Saturday
they
said
gonna,
They weren't being.
oh, they weren't using them?
No, they weren't.
Oh.
On Saturday, so.
Oh. Because I was thinking of that, but I thought that's where the loggers got them all, but they're not gonna use them Saturday,
No.
and they took them
He
out.
said it'd be fine. to bring them.
Okay.
And I guess just, I'm thinking like, if we stack a couple together, they'll be like less likely to blow over.
Yeah, they did last year.
Yeah, so I can let you know how many we need, but
Yeah,
that would be really great.
yeah,
Okay.
I'll go steal them, yeah.
And then Kevin Dorley was gonna bring his tent, like, let's,
No, so when he wrote today to say he is on the road,
yeah,
and I know he's not around this weekend, cause he
Yeah.
told me he can't make it.
Yeah,
I asked him if I could get his tent again, the one we've been using up at Isham Farm, cause I can go over and get it from Danielle at his house.
right.
But he didn't write back to me yet,
Okay.
or he hadn't as of when I
Um,
got here.
I think we have a backup and that would be taught in a recreation tent. we could use.
That would probably, it's the same size,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
Did you
The
guys find
weather
it?
looks good. That's fortunate.
Yes, it is
Yeah.
somewhat
Windy, yeah.
windy, it's what they're
Overcast.
saying, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Last time I checked.
Hurricane?
Yeah, the outside. Maybe.
No, he hasn't responded to me.
Okay, I think,
Or I can just call.
10 to 20 mile per hour winds.
Yeah.
67, okay, so you're breezy, cloudy.
Do you want me to call Kevin's wife and ask Danielle and ask if we have their tent, or do we have the one we can take from here?
we could take the one from here, Todd's like one of the things is kind of broken,
Oh.
but, I mean, it's still.
The only reason we wanna use it, if we could have our own tent with a table. I've got the drive electric stuff and we can put it in there, you know, there's a stand with a sign, and then there's a banner you can hang on if anybody brings in a can tool to put them on, or you can put our own stuff, put our energy kits on there. I don't know what Vermont Gas is bringing.
Yeah,
They were at the fair, they had, 50 energy kits that they
Do-
gave them, so,
do we have a table?
well, Kevin has a table.
I have a table.
You have a big folding table?
Yeah, it's a 6 foot one.
Yeah.
Do you want me to do
Yes,
that?
that would be great.
Okay, I'll set a reminder.
We have
Remember that.
guy wires for the tents.
There are stakes.
Okay.
Yes, yes. So we need a hammer,
Yeah,
very nice sledgehammer.
and the place where the tents are going is that strip of grass, is that gonna be big enough?
It should be, because that's where the tents were last year.
Yeah. same
Yeah.
place as
So it could be
solar
fine for
pump
those
setup.
8x8 10 by 10 tents, and yes, Kevin has straps and guy poles, the guy, tent stakes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, good. I'm feeling better about this.
Mhm.
We talked earlier, food trucks. And
Mm.
what I found when you go to events that have food trucks, nobody goes to the event, they go to the food trucks.
Turns into a food truck.
Yeah, yeah,
That's good.
Mhm.
Or sees a magician, or.
yeah, so we'll, yeah, so ours is first, and South Burlington second, and Burlington's third, and stuff, there, the next three. We got it.
Yeah,
Cool,
feeling okay about this?
yes, you feeling better now?
I think so.
All right.
I'm feeling a little overwhelmed, but.
Well,
that's
you
all right.
felt going on.
Whoops, where were we? Oh, shoot.
Ah,
All right.
so back to our.
Okay.
So are these the 4 things that we decided to recommend to, that's what it reads as, right?
So-
This is the-
Yeah, so basically, from the last time. I can bring up, actually, let me bring up the last memo just so that you know.
I wanted to add
What's going
something
on?
to that list, because I did some research after we had some discussion. And I changed my mind on one item, and I'd like to lobby for it.
Oh, okay. So, the retrofit lighting, my sense based on the conversation is that this is something you thought was gonna happen regardless.
And the time frame was.
And the time work, right, and the revolving loan fund, kind of like, eh. So that being said, those came off.
But number 2 on that is the one that I was gonna add back in the other memo that you just were on. It was the connecting the village to tax corners, multi-use path.
Mhm.
So I looked that up and I asked my husband who does engineering studies and stuff. I was like,
Mhm.
okay, where can I get research? And I went to V-Trans's website and looked at what else had gotten. Or what it would cost to do the scoping study, because the scoping study would be what we would need first and what we could use the ARPA funds for. And it would be on the cheap end, $55,000. On the expensive end, it would be $75,000. But if we had a scoping study done, we could then apply for grants at the state level to get it actually put in. And that scoping study kind of unlocks a lot of other funding and just other opportunities to get things done, because it would determine the feasibility, the overall budget. And so if it's something that a lot of people do want, it could be a good thing to use the ARPA funds on, just because we're more likely to get bigger grants for a larger project like that when we've already demonstrated the feasibility. And it might be hard to get the town to otherwise agree to spend 75 grand And I asked my husband, I was like, okay, ballpark, what do you think this would be? Is it on the 55 end or the 75 end? And he's like, well, given that there are wetlands there and a lot of, he's like, probably the high end to do it well, more like 75. And I looked and there was one, I wanna say St. Albans or something around Route 7. They did a similar scoping study. They got it funded through the state, but it was $75,000.
Okay.
So are you talking about following Route 2 as a separate, on a separated recreational path?
Yeah, I believe that's what that number 2 on the original memo was a connection, because there are bike paths there already. But it says a bike path connection. What would probably happen, and I asked my husband this too, they would probably do alternatives to see different options, but that given the speed and the amount of traffic, it would probably be a multi-use path.
So just.
Yeah, it's a multi-use path, but it's also, it's gonna be noisy, but I guess that's the same as on Route 2A. It just, but, the existing path, it was funny this week, for safe routes to school, so I tried to follow the path from the village to Taft Corners. It goes through Southridge, etc.
Yeah.
I got lost twice and ended up where I started.
It is confusing if you don't know where you're going.
Well, that's the
It
route I
is-
take all the time. I
Yeah,
have a
and
big-
that's-
so you come down with
I know the community's not.
Okay.
Just
From
so-
my house, it's all right turns.
Just to give you a little bit of background on this, Taft Corners Village connection, there wasn't, I don't believe a scoping study was done. I believe that they looked at some alternatives, which is sort of the pre.
Oh, yeah, an alternative study?
I believe so, yeah. And so, at least we have something, and
Yeah.
there's, I believe there was a recommendation for an off-road path, but I'd have to dig that up. Be sure, but we can definitely add that back in if others agree. I think the planning commission has basically submitted a separate memo for the stuff that they want. It's on their list. It probably wouldn't hurt to show more support for it if you feel strongly enough about it.
And be specific that do it, rather than, because we had talked about it in terms of do a chunk of it. And I was like, it seems like there are steps missing. If we did the scoping study so that we had the plans there with alternatives, then we could do chunks of it, but we'd have the whole plan there and we'd be able to unlock other funding.
Cause right now they're the bike paths to nowhere.
Exactly,
And
yeah.
so at Cottonwood, it just stops.
Yeah.
There's other places like that. you know?
Exactly, and so
Yeah.
this would be more likely to get something continuous
Yeah.
because they would out of the scoping study, you'd get a budget for the entire project and different alternatives, so.
And there's precedence for that too, because the new annex project that is going on where the Alliance Church had their 50 acres. The bike path ends over here and starts up in Finney, and they
Yeah.
said that one's going to connect through that project through, so. There's precedence for saying, hey, let's connect this bike thing from all the way from Essex, all the way here, back up to the junction, or
Yeah.
got the junction, from the junction to Taft Corners to out to here, yeah.
I don't know that I agree with this, in that, going through the neighborhoods, if it were actually, I know there's a lot of resistance, the people don't want outsiders.
Nobody cares.
Through Southridge, but that's where the people, that would connect, where the people are living, which is Finney Crossing, and Indian Ridge, what do you call, Bretton Woods, and the north and south ridges. It really wants to be there, not on the south side of 2, where who's gonna use it? It's expensive, it's difficult, and it won't get used. But if you can go where people are and make it, because those streets through Southridge are huge. they're way overbuilt.
They are, well, so same with my neighborhood,
Yeah.
they're like,
Really?
we have huge speeding problems on Chamberlain Lane and Brennan Woods Drive. Because the streets are so wide, we're tempted to
Right,
just start
right.
parking random cars out.
I think that's where we need, and we have bike paths there. But we really need to connect them to the village. And I don't know about, the neighborhood might have changed some, there might. I mean, when I was there searching around for the bike path, I ran into a friend who was on a bike and he ran into two other friends and, it ended up with a kind of a crowd of bicyclists and, it might be changing. And it's also, you don't have Monastery Hill to climb. It's a more gradual climb on the north side of 2 and through the neighborhoods.
Well, and I think a scoping study would also identify that too. You could
Yeah.
say,
As
just
long as that's
because
in the
it's,
purview, okay, but
because we don't, yeah, we don't have to specify along 2, we can specify just connectivity between
Yes.
town
Yes.
corners, and that could be through South Ridge
Right.
and Coyote Run and.
Right.
Brennan would, well, no, it would come out through Allenbrook and then into Indian Ridge.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a private road. It's a town road that's through Southbridge, right?
Some of that is the gas right of way from our gas. Maybe you can put it on top of, through
Yeah.
there.
Well, the state's the ones that.
Right,
Yeah.
the state.
Oh, you mean,
Yeah, put it on the
good luck
circ.
with that.
Yeah.
Pipeline, I mean, that's.
But when you think about it,
Good luck
to
with
put a
that.
bike path on what was gonna be the circ seems
That's
to
on
be
our-
really.
That's on our official
That's
map.
what I've always thought.
Yeah.
It's on the
That's
official
certain,
map.
What, to
Yeah.
have a bike
To have
path?
a bike
It
path.
makes total sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, they're maintaining that because of the
Yeah.
pipeline,
Uh-huh.
but what, they don't. What's the story there? in a nutshell?
Don't get me going on V-Trans and their
Put gravel on it. Do
lack of
Yeah.
complete philosophy.
Would they push back on that?
Oh, they would, yeah. No, we haven't asked the question, but believe me, there will be plenty of pushback.
I wonder why.
Anyway, because they're V-Trans.
So, Kevin, to your point, so,
And they can,
Um,
I don't know.
and Maria, to your recommendation, so, yeah, a feasibility study for a mechanism to connect Tap Corners to the village,
Yeah,
not necessarily a Route 2 corridor.
yeah, anything,
Into
A village
Yeah.
with Taft Corners,
Right.
connection.
Yeah.
connection.
and I called it scoping study in particular, cause that goes beyond feasibility, but will give you alternatives and give you a budget and. All of that, and that would be the one that would cost about $75,000, which is a drop in the bucket of what we have.
Yeah.
Right,
Well,
ish.
but
It's a
we're
bigger-
competing with, for about
Yeah,
300
yeah.
different.
We have
So-
1.6 million,
I missed that,
It's 1.8 million.
1.8 million.
Yeah.
So just a note here on number 2, which is purchasing electric landscaping equipment for Department of Public Works and Recreation.
Mhm.
It looks like we most likely will use our EECDG grant to do that. That's looking like the most likely path for that grant funding, which is about $75,000.
Wow.
And yeah, so I'm not sure it makes sense to keep it on the ARPA list because
Well, the Elon's guy said that one of his ride-on mowers, he paid 19 for it, but it's now 25 or
they're
more.
expensive.
For
Yeah.
one,
Like
$25.
$25,000, right?
I mean, a lot of maintenance equipment there. but
Yeah.
I'm surprised to hear about like a small tractor to like plow your driveway,
Yeah.
for those who live out on
Yeah.
rural.
Oh, you have that zero turn mower for 30. Yeah, that's what it is.
Right,
Sorry.
so my recommendation would be to take that off the ARPA list since I'm pretty sure that we're gonna end up, that there's money to do that
Okay.
from the ECDG grant. But if you wanna keep it on there instead,
Well, and I like the idea of that Chapin brought in. this
Is it
good
gonna be, I'm
difference.
just curious, is it gonna be just mainly for doing the central school or the town park, or is it also like, are they gonna be for the fire station and other town properties around, or? I just don't know
it's
what
for
equipment
the-
is used where and.
Yeah, it's for the public works grounds equipment, which would be any land that's owned by the town that.
So they
gets
trailer it
maintained
and then
around.
go around and mow.
Right,
Okay.
and the rec department.
Yeah, I saw them the
So
other
all-
day
Yeah.
with it,
So Brennan.
one of those airplanes sitting on a trailer.
Rosin.
And it was suddenly
It's like a holy-
mowing in one place and later in the day it started mowing in another place, so they're moving around. Okay, yeah, it's out in the school, the park behind the school,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so both Bruce and Todd are interested in zero turn mowers, so I think that'd be
Electric.
great.
Yeah.
You know, and plus some other sort of like things like weed whackers.
Yeah.
I think Todd already has some electric tools. Anyway,
I've got one and I have way too
I've had
much
it
fun
for
with
12
that.
years and it just works, yeah. it's
Um,
nice.
so what do you think about the other items on this list, given? And I'm sorry, let me stop share and then reshare because, let's see, the thing was in the way of me, okay, no, reshare.
I'm still personally not a fan of the canopy thing. Just because I don't know how much it's actually gonna catch on.
You're
They're nice, they're nice.
They're nice, but if the idea that how it's pitched is like. It's a model for developers to cover, wasn't that it?
Yeah, but yeah,
I don't think developers are gonna be like, oh, look, hey, there's one, I'm gonna put it, I'm like, there are so many in Vermont, developers are aware of them, they're just not often economically. It's much more expensive to install solar and a canopy rather than ground or roof mounted, so I'm not sure how much. If we do it, we would have to do it for a reason other than a demo.
Display. Well,
Yeah,
if you're putting a canopy up anyway, yes, you put the solar.
Yeah.
I don't know if you do the whole project just for solar.
Yeah.
That's a really expensive
generally
mounting
don't.
system.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, look at the Alchemist, I'm still not sure why they did that, other than. That had to cost so much money when they have all that field they could have put solar on, but they just decided to do a canopy.
And it did look cool.
Yeah, it does look
Yeah.
cool, but man, it's expensive.
On the first one, I had hoped Kevin was gonna be at the meeting today. Because what we need here is, I guess we need specifics. So that's why I was out trying to, follow the bike path through Southridge the other day. I was trying to find out, where the, shovel ready, as we talked about at our last meeting, right?
right.
And so I contacted, Andy Brewer and Kevin, but we need to get, it would really be helpful to have specific projects in mind, and I don't know, I guess the dates, I think, you're going, Eric said he's gonna go to the select board, in early October with this?
Yeah, so Kevin, I think that may be kind of a longer project, but I do think that. I do think it can be done, but I don't think it makes sense to rush that process of like identifying and prioritizing those spots. I do think
Okay.
you can come up with a budget that you can do simple things that have a lot of impact, and that's why, like I listed the RFB installation for, either for crosswalks that don't have it, or do a full crosswalk treatment with the RFB, because I think that's like something that's highly impactful. It doesn't cost a lot of money. And if done like in strategic locations around the school, that can make a big difference.
And could you maybe also put in there, close gaps in existing trails? Of course, like you have a bridge over the Allen Brook and it just dead ends, right?
Where's that?
Yeah,
Oh, on
it
top
could,
of that?
it's like 300 feet, or no, I'm sorry, 300 yards from Finney Crossing. And you just have a grass field,
Yeah,
like,
Oh, yeah, that's the one they're gonna connect when they build the annex.
Yeah.
Yes.
which we've been waiting for 5 years. We've been waiting for 5 years now, right?
Mhm. But Yeah, so
Like-
I don't know, my
Like,
recommendation.
yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
My recommendation would be to identify relatively inexpensive projects that can have a big impact and not like,
Yeah.
you know,
Bang for the buck.
let's add 1,000 feet of more path, cause that, you know, like, so
Well,
think of small.
I agree with you, when we were doing the Catamount committee ones, the ones I worked on, I did things that were a few $100s, a few $1,000s. One of the other groups wanted a snowmaking equipment for $750,000, and I thought, that's never gonna go over, you know, so, you know, we haven't, they're meeting tomorrow night and they're gonna whittle down the list and. I'm hoping they go, you know, we've got waterfowl nesting, all right, I need $2,000, you know, something like that, you know.
There are so many crosswalks that are neglected. Like there's a crosswalk on Talcott that never gets striped and it drives me crazy because it's next to my daycare.
Well, see, stuff like that, you know, like stuff, like, you know, improve X crosswalk at, you know, X
Yeah.
location, restrike this, put a
I would
flashing
put
light
that-
beacon over here.
The worst part is that daycare, not just, I mean, this is selfish, obviously, they go on walks with the kids and they don't have a striped crosswalk
Right.
there with little tiny
Yeah,
kids and that's.
Yeah,
That's, the sightlines are poor too, cause it's on a curve.
yeah.
It would be nice to have
Well,
that.
that's where
crosswalk.
these rapid flash beacons work really well. When you
Yeah,
put those on those
exactly,
roads,
yeah.
those are extremely useful.
And
Yeah.
they're not that expensive, I
Yeah.
think it's like.
Cause they're solar powered, aren't they? A
Yeah.
lot of them are solar
Yeah.
powered,
All the
Yeah.
ones along
Yeah.
the two or so.
yeah. So you're not laying cable to run the things, yeah.
Okay, well, you know, people complain all the time and have for years about these stupid gaps in the pathway. So like you just dismissed my recommendation.
no,
about that,
I-
saying, oh, it's going to use up too much funds. Well, there's $2 million here.
Yeah.
Let's use it to close up those gaps where people walk and the sidewalk just ends and there's you know, something to connect to ahead. I mean,
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kevin, I didn't mean to be dismissive. I understand that that is a priority and a need. I'm just trying to be realistic about this, you know, it seems like a large amount of money, but when you look at it spread over all the town and all the different departments that are vying for funds. Just trying to think of it as like. If there's a list of relatively, you know, not crazy expensive projects, they might be more seriously considered than.
Where is this crossing? You said it's from Finney, what is it supposed to connect
Yeah,
to?
so
what-
there's- Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we're waiting for, you know, it goes across private property. And so, you know, at first it was gonna be a low-income housing development of 53 units or something like that. And then it was gonna be a mega church, and now it's gonna be something else. And every time the project gets pushed off, the bike path gets pushed off. And now people are forced to go off onto 2A with, you know, and it's ridiculous. There's a bridge that costs $500,000 and it doesn't go anywhere, and it's been there for 5 years.
Yeah. So the project, it's called the Annex, the plans are playing around here, is gonna take that 52 acres that the Alliance Church owned, that Snyder now owns. And one of the conditions of that was to connect the bike path from Finney Crossing where it ends on,
Oh, where are we?
on Dunmore,
Where I am.
and take it back to that bridge. So that is included in that project.
Meadow Run?
And that project is gonna, the shovel in the ground is.
That project is going through its approval process now. In
Yeah.
fact, I got a letter on it, it's going through the next step of the approval process now.
In Act 250, is it?
There was actually another town meeting coming up in October.
Oh, yeah, right.
Okay, it does,
I
it should
think
be,
they'll be starting next year, yeah, my guess, for the infrastructure.
okay, but are there others that are neat that, around town where it's just you walk in and it just ends nowhere, so. Anyway, you know, I think that's something that people have been asking for a long time in the town, is closing up the pedestrian gaps.
I mean, there are plenty into Taft's Corners, cause there's that weird path that kind of goes behind the trees at
Yeah.
where 2 and Talcott, it's like kind of by the gas station and Dunkin' Donuts.
Mhm.
Like, there's just a path. And then just ends, it's not very
Yeah,
easy to
yeah,
cross
yeah.
to
Yeah.
No, yeah.
and
I
get
know what
over
you're
to
talking about.
Maple Tree Place
Right.
if you're on the north side of
Yeah.
Williston, it's just.
Right. No, yes.
The signaling's weird too, it could just be updated to have better
Well,
signaling, and
That's,
there's,
So-
that's V-Trans, isn't it?
Yeah, so this is also another issue that's
Oh, it's
coming up,
state.
is just, the idea of the town taking over a portion of state highway, that was, big report was done this past year, Williston participated in this pilot class 1 highway study. And basically, the upshot of that is that the town will not take it over likely because it costs too much.
yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, there is something to be said for having more control, like right now, the town doesn't have any control over Route 2 or Route 2A, so you have these giant state highways. And, it's very difficult for pedestrians and for cyclists to.
Yeah.
I guess we're lucky to have that, but path on too.
But it's-
Well, we've
it's not
developed
very-
that north
yeah.
side of the road now with wealthy living and the sub shop,
Wealthy.
yeah. And all that stuff, but it's hard to cross that street to
Yeah.
Hannaford's and that whole development.
Oh,
So
yeah,
we
yeah,
created sort of a town center, but getting across that,
Oh, yeah, it's
you're
in
kind
like
of like
quadrants,
Frogger,
yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
it's very
which is
difficult.
unfortunate. It's
Yeah.
again, that creating that setup where you have to really makes more sense to drive, because I want to shop at Hannaford's in the other
Mhm.
store, but I drive.
Oh, I drive too, and I
Which
live
is
right off of
ridiculous.
Talcott,
Yeah.
which is dumb.
Cause
I
you
do
know,
love
walking
the
across
tunnel.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need something, because walking across that street feels like you're walking across a highway.
I do
Yeah,
appreciate
you are,
that,
in fact.
You are.
I do appreciate that there are at least crossing 2A in the main part of Tap Corners. It is a standalone pedestrian phase. So all traffic is stopped. You're
Right.
not crossing, there's no,
Yeah.
like, you get to start crossing and then traffic goes. It's
Yeah.
like, no,
It
traffic
stops.
is
But then you're
there.
crossing with, 50 cars waiting for you to.
I'm okay with that.
A little
But
conscious, you know.
I don't like it. I
Back to the
like that.
pedestrian tunnel kind of thing would make total sense, because then with well lit, and then you're just strolling through the neighborhood. Versus, driving. These things, I think, are all.
I mean, I
Yeah.
drive from
should be
Shaw's to
looking at-
Bethside because, or
So-
Shaw's Hill maybe because it's
Yeah.
terrible to walk from.
Yeah.
So are we going to take out number 2?
I'd be fine with that if
If there's other
other
funding,
funding, we should
funding,
use the
yes.
funding.
yeah,
Alright.
and then both for what Maria's suggesting and what Kevin's talking about, this feasibility study of how do we better interconnect the bike paths within the town?
The multi-use paths. yes.
Multi-use
I think-
paths
I think
from
that's
the
a
village
model.
to
Yeah.
Tap Corners. And including other disconnected paths, so that it can be, throw $100,000 in there,
Yeah,
ask for more than you think it's gonna be.
Yeah,
So it sounds like number 1, like expanding that basically.
to
Yes,
include,
yes.
yeah,
Although-
to include a scoping study
Right,
for connecting the village. to
and I
Tap
like
Corners.
to
Identifying the
leave
easy
in,
ones.
I like leaving in the flashing beacons because they're very
100%.
effective.
I want one on.
Yeah, find the low hanging fruit at least
Yeah,
on
yeah.
those segments that
Yes.
connect.
Mhm. Okay,
I know we're running late, but I just want to just say one quick thing about the EV charging.
Mhm.
As a personal experiment, I tried to take my low range electric car down to Massachusetts to visit my father. I knew I'd have to stop in the White River area to charge and then also somewhere else before getting to central Massachusetts. In White River area, I pulled up to a charge point
I
ones
don't
there.
know which one you.
And they both said available and working, and my car would not communicate with either of them. After 45 minutes of being on the phone with the guy, he restarted them, still couldn't charge my car. I had to go across the river to West Lebanon where, Electrify America at the Hannaford, at the Walmart over there. Of the 4 chargers there, only 2 of them were working. One of them had a Rivian parked at it that was plugged in and not charging for
Oh,
about
no.
45 minutes, so I just unplugged that eventually. But anyway, it was very frustrating and
Yeah.
stressful. And I feel like Williston is well located to be a charging mecca for people passing through. Like when I was at the,
Because there's a lot of amenities here.
yeah, there's a lot of amenities, and that's exactly what you
Yes.
want. You don't want your charging at a park and ride where there's, if you're gonna sit there for 20 minutes or 45
Yeah.
or an hour,
True.
you're gonna wanna go
Ma-
eat somewhere or go
Maple Tree
shopping. You're
Place
not
would
gonna wanna
perfect.
be.
Well, that town
So-
owned parcel, Maple Tree Place.
I know,
is-
that's why I
that's a
really,
parking lot
that's why I
right now.
really like that idea of,
Line up 6 of them there.
Yeah,
That'd
and-
be full. Bring business in, yeah, people when they're sitting
Yeah, I
there.
would
they're
think the
shopping.
retailers would support it. When I was at the hotel,
It's a good idea.
when I was at the Montreal airport, the guy driving the shuttle asked me where I was from. I said Williston, Vermont. He's like Longhorn Steakhouse. He's like, every time I go down to Boston, I stop in Williston.
I've
And
never
we go to
been.
the Longhorn. But someone from Montreal that drives the bus knew about Williston
Yeah.
because we're on the interstate and we're a place to stop.
Thank you.
Our amenities here, and I think if we made, yeah, and it would benefit the retail aspect of the
That's a good idea.
half center.
Yeah, more
half
so. than
corners.
restaurant
Right,
food.
and we talked last week, or our last meeting, about putting it on the town property at Taps Corners.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
on the list.
And I
Yeah.
really think that, I think we should maybe put a larger number there. Because this one also includes the central school and everything. So I would like to see more money to put to it. Thank you, Matt, for bringing it up. It's great. I've been having a lot more luck with, I've charged at Hannaford's a lot because I get free charging with my car. And I charged today at a really fast charger in Rutland. And I had no problem. So, Matt's experience is,
Well, this has been something that, I mean, tons of video bloggers and whatnot have done. It's like the frustration with not
Oh, yeah.
working, chargers that aren't working.
Yeah,
I think what's gonna happen is eventually when we have charging stations where you pay and people are actually making money off of it, yeah, they're gonna be, there's just not there's not the incentive there to keep them working well or ensure they're in proper
Yeah, I know.
use right now.
Yeah.
So when we put in
I don't-
charges, we wanna make sure that, is the town making sure that they're working?
well, that's
Well,
my
you
next
wanna make this
question is,
contract.
Yeah,
Well,
we
but
need,
I mean, we may be funding it, but you're basically buying a product and service then. You
Yeah.
know, here's my product, a dual head charger,
Needs to be
however
maintained.
many. There's a service contract that says that thing has to be maintained.
yeah,
and that we make sure that we know when it goes down so that it can be
So,
maintained.
so to Kevin's point, we're gonna steal 30,000 from the mower, do we put, 100,000 in this list? Down under.
I think it's the future. I mean, I think electric cars are taking off, is from what I'm seeing.
I would,
100,000 is
and how much was under number 4?
5% of the payment?
There's no dollar amount.
I agree with the comment that I don't know that that's I don't know if that's a wise thing.
The demonstration project?
Can't be, yeah.
No, I agree. I mean, solar is established.
Yeah.
Yeah, I prefer throwing money at EV chargers, I think, and I think we can make the argument, like you said, that it also is good for businesses because we can become a place where people can
Right,
reliably
right,
charge,
right.
and so
That
they
would be
stop
huge.
over.
Right.
And, and I never thought of that, the folks coming from Quebec,
Yeah,
it's, you see them all the time,
yeah.
and this is
Actually, I
a
was
good,
surprised when I was at the chargers there, just waiting and talking to people there.
Yeah.
Several people did not own electric cars, but they had rented electric cars and they
Yeah.
got the manual out trying to figure out how to charge it.
Yeah.
And
People were
God,
renting
and then a
electric
guy,
cars and driving up from Boston.
Yeah, with no idea what they're
With
doing.
no
Yeah.
idea what
Yeah.
they're doing.
Yeah, they're
It
renting
took me a year and a half to get the guts to drive down to Massachusetts with my own car.
And
They're
there's
just
this
renting
going
it,
for
let's drive up to.
With a manual, yeah.
You know?
By the way, a little tip about White River Junction, there's a flow charger, I think it's in back of the Hampton Inn or something. It's
Oh,
like-
yeah, yeah.
See, you see where this is gonna go. Can you imagine if gasoline stations were this
I know.
disorganized?
Exactly.
But they were, you know, 100 years ago, they were terrible, but but now it's all the same, no matter what. You can still run
Everything's
into
across the street from each other.
Well, yeah, because there's.
you can still run into an old service station where their pumps are crappy, but those are pretty few and far between.
Yeah.
In another few years, electrical is just gonna be, it's got to be uniform.
Yeah.
Well, and everyone's
Yeah.
gonna go to the Tesla supercharger model now.
Well, Tesla's gonna take over the whole network, I think. They should.
They
because they're
should
the only
because
ones
they know
who
how
prove-
to do
Yeah,
it.
they're the only ones who prove they can.
There's work.
So it is 8:25.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably.
So do we have this the way we want it?
So I think it's one,
I mean,
We wanna
obviously, what you
beef
see
up
is-
one and
three,
beef up 3,
Yeah,
beef up one and beef up three.
eliminate 2 and
2
4.
and 4.
That way we come really strong,
Yeah.
but two, endorse it, give a very strong argument.
Right.
I like
Right.
the idea of trimming it down.
And I would include the scoping study for the tap corners to village.
In one.
As one, as its
Yeah.
own separate thing, and then
Oh, okay.
an assessment of critical gaps in the entire network. Maybe assessment and identification of high priority critical gaps to fix, or whatever. Does that sound? I like
Yeah.
that.
Does the town already have a map of like where
We
all
have,
those
Yes.
like paths?
yeah, we have
are
the
and-
official map.
Somebody
Yeah.
that might
Yeah.
have shown it or something, all
Yeah.
those weird segments that are out there, that's
Yep.
the starting point, right?
is there anything that we need, that we can do for, weatherization? Oh, wait, you had one, there's more to the list there, sorry?
What's that?
Is there more, is there more below? Is there 5 and 6?
That's
No?
it.
So
We
what
paired
about
it.
outreach? What about outreach, trying to, I know weatherization's, like, do we have any initiatives that we want to get our message across?
I mean, I think we leave those to the people who are really good at doing that already.
Well, I mean, Melinda did the whole outreach piece
Yeah.
with hundreds of residents.
Okay, so we don't need
It's
money
valuable.
funding us to do things that,
I think we would be good, not from a funding perspective, but just saying, do we want to piggyback on window dressers some year as our own project,
So-
you know?
And FYI about money for outreach, we do have $4,000 from the MERP grant, so we do have some money for that.
Okay. Good idea, Kevin.
I think large scale, like weatherization and stuff like that, that's. I mean, we have Efficiency Vermont and GMP and a lot of other,
Yeah.
that's part of their business.
Yeah,
Kind of let them.
they do on all the button stuff, pretty hard.
Okay, Maria, you were gonna draft the next Looking Green article?
I am, what was it about? Remind me. What was it? It was about whether it's.
Do it a week, right?
It's doing.
you were really excited about the subject. You grabbed it.
What was it? I don't remember. Okay, I'm 34 weeks pregnant. Forgive me if I can't remember everything.
34?
Maria mentioned the idea of an article that lists all the available weatherization and energy efficiency and incentives now that winter is approaching. Kevin
Oh.
also thinks for later an article about heat pumps would be useful.
Uh-huh.
There's
Okay,
some federal incentives I heard too.
But
Yeah,
Maria, you've got like 3 weeks to being full term.
I know, and Jane came at 37.4, so I'm hoping this one holds up a little bit longer.
So while you're screaming, you're gonna be writing.
We don't
have to write an article. We're under no contractual obligation to the Observer.
We're hosting a
Uh,
this weekend.
Yeah.
yeah, if we're gonna do the energy fair, then we can do a post-energy fair article.
Yeah,
I
you
can
can-
put, I can
you
put
can
that
just-
together
you
pretty
can just
easily,
do
just
that.
like last year.
Yeah.
I'll bring my camera with the big pictures,
Do that.
send it to Jason, you know, he was really.
Yeah,
nice
that
to
sounds
have
perfect,
on
perfect.
Page 2 last week.
It would still be nice though sometime in the fall to do a weatherization one.
Well, we're still not out of it.
Yeah.
But,
I-
but,
Speaking,
could I just add that, if you could have a link to what Maria's article was gonna be about the where to find, what's the best list of where to find your rebates and incentives?
leave remote.
Yes.
I mean, that's the thing, we can piggyback on that a little bit, and I'm happy to write up part of it being like, here are some of the categories and like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right, and then just have that in the article that you were suggesting, Rita.
So button up is here again. You know, we did button up last year and, you know, there are materials out there. You can just we could plagiarize
It'd
something.
be, October would be a perfect. month
It'd
to
be
do that.
October for that. I can do a post
Yeah.
energy fair
Let's do that.
write up.
Yeah.
And,
Sure.
and then
could start on that
contribute some
article.
pictures and then we can start on our October one. you know.
So I probably will miss a few energy committee meetings.
No.
Bring your children.
And then more than likely be joining remote, so probably for 2 months, the first month. I probably just won't join those meetings.
Yeah.
So probably late October and early November, and then through the holidays, I'll be zooming in.
Fair.
So,
I can see you. I haven't slept in 4 days. What do you make?
Alright, sure.
Get what we can out of you now.
well, yeah, and that's what work is doing right now too, and it's just like, oh